Hello, 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 you gorgeous human being. It is Suzy Ashworth here, and you are listening to the Infinite Receiving podcast. And I have got a juicy, it was like juicy but strained.
I was loving this intro, I'm not going to lie. I was here for it. I was like, oh my God, I'm just like loving this.
A juicy one for you today. And you've already heard her dulcet tones, which is amazing. I'm really excited about this conversation. I am really happy to be introducing you to an old friend that we can't quite work out when or how or where it first happened, but we have been traversing each other's timelines for about the last 6 years. Alex is a manifestation coach. She is a podcaster of the incredible podcast show, The Upgrade Season. Is it called The Upgrade Season? Just The Upgrade?
It's Upgrade Season.
It is The Upgrade Season. And I don't know, we're going to have a really beautiful conversation today. Hi, Alex.
Thank you for that intro.
Yeah.
I felt like I was being very northern, joining in with it. Just classic, just like getting stuck in from the get-go.
I'm like, ready, I'm here, let's go.
Yeah, literally, I'm like, come on, babes, let's talk about things. But no, yeah, I'm really excited to be here, so thank you for having me.
Can you tell me, how long have you now been in business?
Oh, so I was like I was going to say a pandemic baby, in that I started my business, this business, I had a food business beforehand, so a product-based business.
Yeah.
But I started the kind of coaching business just before the pandemic started. So I started the October, November before, and by February we were in lockdown.
This is, even you saying this to me is quite interesting because I feel like we have known each other almost for as long as I've been in business.
So when was yours? When did you begin?
It's my 11th year this year.
Wow.
So I feel like I have been seeing you and feeling your presence for like since the beginning.
Yeah.
Can you share what we were talking about with the timeline hopping before we recorded? Because this is bizarre.
Honestly, I would be relieved to, because I think we've hopped a timeline. So there's this thing called I think it's the Mandela effect. And it's basically, that's why it began. And I'm gonna butcher the original one, so I won't go into it too much, but it's something about the way that people remember the timeline of Nelson Mandela.
Okay.
But the ones that really stand out to me is things like people remember the Monopoly man having a monocle, but he doesn't.
Can we all just take a breath? Can we all just take a minute? Because I absolutely, I would put a lot of money on the fact that the Monopoly man has a monocle, or used to. Like maybe there's been a rebrand, but you're telling me
Babe,
never.
I can see it in my head. I can see it in my mind. Yeah. He has a monocle.
Yeah.
And the other one is at the end of the Queen song. You did some great singing earlier, babe. We are the champions, my friend. But anyway, at the end of that wonderful song that we did a rendition of for you, I always remember it going, of the world.
Of the world.
Yeah. Not a line. Not in there. So the theory behind it is that we have been on different timelines and we've kind of like hopped over, which was why some people remember this version of history where certain things happened and things were a certain way, but now we've hopped over to a different timeline and that version of history doesn't exist, which is why we have this collective memory of things that aren't in our reality. Which, bringing it back to us, I have a theory we've been on this journey because I rarely get this either. I feel like there's a whole black hole in my memory of like how we first came into interaction with each other.
Yeah.
And when we first met, I was like, no, that wasn't the first time we met. But we're like, no, it was technically. It doesn't feel like that. So I think we've Thailand hopped together, babe.
The first time we met in person was on Necker Island.
How baller do we sound when you say that, babe?
Really baller. And it felt like there was I think you meet people sometimes and it's like a soul connection. And that is how I would describe us being in the studio. This is how I would describe us on Necker. It's like, I just get you. I think that it is interesting, this whole timeline thing, because this is kind of what we do when it comes to manifestation, right?
Yeah.
But we're just being intentional with it.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about your journey with manifestation?
It's been a really interesting journey. I first started consciously manifesting in my first business, and it was on quite a basic level, so to speak, although my personal beliefs around manifestation is that we overcomplicate it. It can be incredibly simple. But I had my vision board, and I would write on that vision board the stockists that I wanted to be stocked in and where I wanted my product to be and what I wanted my reality to look like. And it got fucking freaky. Like we were a small business. I started that business from my kitchen. I was literally it was a chia jam company. I made chia jam in my kitchen. And I went from that to, we were stocked in Holland and Barrett and Selfridges and Ocado and Deliciously Ella's Delis and all these places. And we got to a point where I had Sainsbury's on my board, and Sainsbury's dropped into my DMs, shit you not, dropped into my DMs and was like, hey, we want to stock your product. And I'd get it if we were this huge business with hundreds of thousands of followers, but we weren't. We were, even though we were stocked in all these places, there was 2 of us. We were relatively small.
Yeah.
And I was like, God, I'm allowed to swear, aren't I? Because I've just been swearing already.
There is no need for filtering or self-censorship on this podcast.
Oh my God. Yeah. When there was a pause, I was like, oh, fuck. She's going to have to erase so much of this already. But I was like, this shit's wild. Like these things that I am consciously saying I want to create into my reality and focusing on, it's happening. And from there, I got much more intentional with the process and how I was going about the process, and just had wild story after wild story of things that were happening.
Yeah.
So and in the background to my food business, I did a health coaching qualification, but it was a combined qualification where it was a life coaching and health coaching. It was a year long. And through that process, you obviously do a lot of inner work yourself. Yeah. Through that process, I realized, look, this business that I've created isn't in alignment for me. And took myself on this journey of realigning my life, realigning my business. And as part of that, going on this manifestation journey. So actually, when I came out the other side and I was like, I want to coach, it felt very natural to be like, I felt like I had the secrets to the universe. I was like, I want to tell people about this amazing thing that is available to them. Because my own life went from night and day. It was corporate, 9 to 5, looking at the next 40 years of my life, looking like that, not seeing any other opportunities or availabilities, to working for myself, starting these businesses, having these incredible opportunities coming in, and just being like, wow, we are actually magic.
Where did you learn about manifestation to start with?
Oh, that's a really good question. That is a really good question. I don't have a specific moment where I was like, I knew about vision boards, but I hadn't read The Secret at that point.
Right.
Which is like a common place to begin. I think honestly, I'm a bit of a yes girl. Like I've done wild things. I've looked at my own pussy in a mirror in a room full of women. I've done much wilder things than that at this point. That used to be my wild story. I've gone to whole new levels recently. I'm very down for trying new things. Yeah. And the only answer I can honestly give is I think I probably came across it as part of that journey of just exploring. Yoga actually probably as well. I was big into, I'd done my first year, I ran off to an ashram when I was 21, did my first yoga teacher training, then ignored it all and came back and went into corporate. Yeah. And then I redid it again in the background of this grand realignment at that time. So probably through yoga as well. But yeah, I think it would have been just through this journey of curiosity. I was picking up pieces here and there.
You said that you think that often we overcomplicate manifestation and it can be a lot more simple than what people talk about. Can you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I distilled everything that I knew about manifestation and kind of tried to refine this process that I've been going through. And the process that I kind of came up with, I called the crystal codes, and each letter of crystal stood for a different stage in it. So it was clarity, resistance, your ass, start, trust, acknowledge, and love being the universal energy that runs through all of it. So I'd kind of distilled it into this process, and then I got the imposter syndrome.
Right.
I was like, I can't teach people about manifestation. I don't understand quantum physics. Yeah. And I can't teach people about manifestation because of da-da-da and da-da-da and da-da-da. You know that voice, the constant fucking voice of who am I to be teaching about this? So I went on this big journey of like, if I'm going to teach this, and this is one of my like, I would say like wounds that I have to work with.
Yeah.
I think I have to be the expert. I have to know everything
Yes.
in order to share something. So I went on this journey of like, I need to become the expert. And the more I went through those processes, the more I distilled it down and was like, oh no, this is actually really simple. And I think it's a way of blocking ourselves from going into the manifestation process. Or as you were talking about, we've just had a conversation. So, kind of following from there, you're talking about being the co-creator.
Yeah.
I think we block ourselves and distance ourselves from that role so we can kind of victim out and be like, not on me, by making it out to be this super complicated thing that we can't do.
Yeah.
And actually manifestations as simple as in that moment, deciding again, choosing what it is that you do want to create and taking action towards that step by step, rather than just like leaning out and being like, let's just see what happens.
I'm curious, how did you feel during those early stages where you had the vision board, like just on a daily basis? Because I think that a lot of people are expecting or wanting or thinking that they need to feel high vibe, high energy. And so I'm curious about, like, when you reflect back on that time, how did you feel just generally?
So funny you ask this, because we're so linked up right now, because this was the kind of part 2 to the first part of the answer I gave. Back then, I had a lot of self-doubt. I felt like I was walking this path I hadn't seen anyone else walk. My husband had started a business, but it was a tech startup.
Yeah.
Completely different ball game. I hadn't run a business before. I didn't have friends who ran businesses. It felt very alien. And so on a daily basis, I was filled with self-doubt. I was throwing the pity party on the floor, crying to my husband, being like, what the fuck am I doing? Is this even going to work? So I was riddled with self-doubt, but I kept coming back to choosing the vision over that. And I remember at the time when I left my job, everyone said to me, you are so brave. And I remember thinking, I'm not brave. I just know that the other reality available to me is so unacceptable to me right now. And well, quite frankly, honestly, at that point, I was struggling with my mental health so point. I was like, that will kill me.
Yeah.
I don't have a choice. It's not brave. The unknown feels so much more exciting right now than this path, which I do know the outcome of. I'm going to be miserable. I'm going to be unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost me my mental health. And honestly, at that point, I knew it would cost me my life. I was like, I can't choose that anymore. So I don't sign up to this belief of needing to be high vibe. But the part 2 to that is that I then had this, prior to getting pregnant, I was living my best fucking life. I was in Miami. I was doing the 100K weeks. I was like thriving on what felt like every level. And I got pregnant. I got really, really sick. And that was round 2 of like re-examining everything I believe about manifestation. And in particular, this belief you need to be high vibe in order to manifest. I don't think that's true.
There's a lot in here. Getting pregnant and being really sick, how did that impact your relationship with the idea of co-creating your existence? What was going through your mind when you're like horrendously, because I should know this because of my hypnobirthing background, but what's it called when you're sick constantly?
Do you know what? I honestly can't say the full name. Like when I say it, I get in twizzles, but it's HG for short. So it's hyperemesis.
Yeah.
And then there's another part, but like honestly, it tongue twizzles me.
Yeah.
People call it an HG in general. So, but it was HG. And honestly, it was really confronting. I had a whole, I guess, ego death.
Yeah.
Everything that I thought made me seemed to fall away, and it happened very rapidly. So this me who was a go-getter and thriving in my business and creating all these amazing things in my business, that fell away. I was still running my business, but I wasn't outwardly expanding or creating it in the way that I had been previously. All my tools fell away. I couldn't meditate. I couldn't go for walks. I couldn't journal. Reading would make me literally everything made me nauseous. I would say for the first like 4.5 months, after that, it definitely eased, and I could bring in some of these tools again. Like I could read and listen to things. The only thing I could listen to be fair, was mantras, because even music would trigger. It was like too confronting on my senses.
Yeah.
So all my tools of manifestation fell away. And I was like, oh my God. And honestly, I was like, have I just been full of shit?
Well, do you think that you need tools in order to manifest consciously?
Not now. And that was the full circle moment and the realization that I came to. A couple of realizations. First of all, that I could be the embodiment of manifestation. I didn't have to do manifestation. I could embody manifestation.
Okay, so explain what you mean by that.
Okay, so doing manifestation to me is like doing the tools and the rituals.
Yeah.
Which I think can actually help you embody manifestation.
Because it reminds you.
Yes.
It keeps you coming back to the anchored, like this is who we are being, this is what we are creating. It's a good reminder.
Yeah, and also I think sometimes we need to rewrite our patterns into those patterns of recognizing that.
Yeah.
Although is that a remembering really? Probably more of a remembering, but still. So instead embodying it and being like, I can be a walking embodiment of being a co-creator. I don't need to be journaling. I don't have to do the 90-minute morning ritual. The second thing was, and this is controversial, I'm interested in your take on this. I think we are given the experiences we often need or that help us grow and expand, even in a way at the time that doesn't feel like a growth or an expansion, and we can't maybe see it at the time. But I don't think we necessarily always consciously manifest those in. I believe that some things happen, but we won't really know why until the after.
Yeah. So there's a universal law that many people do not talk about, which is the universal law of grace. And that law is you will always get what you need, not necessarily what it is that you want. The universe will always give you what you need in order to have the next upgrade.
Do you know what I call that? A salty slap in the face.
Yeah.
Because do you know what it reminds me of? You know, when you get the wave in your face and you're like, oh.
Yeah. And so I absolutely believe that. And if you are unable or unwilling most of the time to extract the lesson, you can find yourself in this whirlpool of just not progressing, also known as the tunnel of doom.
Oh, how we know the tunnel of doom. How we know the tunnel of doom. I love that.
Yeah, which is a very challenging place to be in when you have a level of self-awareness, because you want to out of that tunnel as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
But the only way out is through. And sometimes it is just challenging to see what the lesson is until you are on the other side of it. This is the beauty of hindsight.
Yeah.
And then how we interpret what has happened to us will determine how we take our next steps, which will determine how effective we are when it comes to co-creating at the next level. And so the example I use is looking back at my mum's death and being like, this was the greatest tragedy, but actually it was the greatest gift. So because I'm able to extract the gifts, I get to receive so much more wisdom from that experience than it solely being the greatest tragedy.
I love that. That bit really hit me I feel like I'm your hype queen for your book right now. I swear to God, Suzy's not paid me to do any of this. I genuinely just listened to it and was like mind blown. But that really hit me in your book when you spoke about that, and also your honesty with that as well, because I think that's a key part of it as well. Like being radically honest with ourselves of like, what was my piece in this? But no, I'm totally with you. And I think the piece I would add there is it gave me a greater recognition of just, I think I was too quick to try and get out the tunnel, as you put it. But also too quick to try and extract the lesson. And actually, it really awoke me to there are times in your life where you just need to be in the experience.
Yeah.
And you need to be okay with being in the experience and trust without knowing when that's going to be or what it's going to look like. There will come a time, even though you want to slap someone in the fucking face if they say it to you in that moment, where you will be grateful for it, or you will be able to extract that gift and you will be able to see that lesson, but just not racing towards it in the moment. And like going back to the tunnel analogy, I would also say like, I realized I had to go deeper into the tunnel before I could get out. And that was jarring for me. I thought the way out was the light.
Yeah.
And the way out was actually going deeper into the darkness.
How deep did you have to go?
Babe, fucking deep. So deep. Like center of the earth deep. Like it was dark, and it really was dark. And for me, again, you know, in my personal journey with this, that brought a wound up for me, because so much of my journey had been struggling with my mental health, having a nervous breakdown, leaving my corporate job, recreating this incredible, beautiful life of alignment. So to find myself back in that tunnel, super triggering. I was like, I didn't think we'd end up back here. Why are we here again?
Were you blaming yourself? Like, what did I do wrong in order to get into this space, or different?
Do you know what's interesting? I actually read a book and it said, if you feel sick during your pregnancy, that's you rejecting your own pregnancy.
Oh, thanks.
So I actually felt more. And again, it was a real healing process for me, with some of the stuff that is shared by the spiritual community around experiences like this. I actually felt that there were parts of the spiritual community blaming me for my experience.
So irresponsible.
But also frustrating, being in that position when I was like, trust me, if I could meditate my way out of it, I'd be out of it. I was trying everything, you know. I was having acupuncture every 72 hours. I tried the healing frequencies and the Reiki and the, like, literally, like, you name it, I tried it. And it wasn't working. And so I just needed to be in that experience. But I found it jarring to be told, you've created this.
Did you doubt your motherhood at that point? Like, am I going to be a good mother if I am being told that I am rejecting my pregnancy?
I didn't know if I could even go through the pregnancy. Honestly, it was that bad at points where I was like, it's really hard to explain, but every moment of the day felt like an hour. And every hour felt like a day. So a day felt like a week. And it was such an intense experience, and it's fully in your body as well. So it's not, you can't tap out. You can't be like, you know what, I'm just going to put a song on and have 5 minutes break from this experience. You're just in it. And I did doubt, could I get through the experience? So I guess in that sense, there was that element of like, can I get through this? But I didn't doubt my ability to mother, in that I knew, and I'm really grateful. I had a good week and a half of knowing I was pregnant prior to the sickness really hitting in. And I was elated.
Okay.
I was shocked because it wasn't planned. Very, very shocked. And then I remember thinking, I didn't think my life could get any better. It literally makes me emotional now. Like, I didn't think my life could get any better. I've created this amazing life. I have this amazing husband, and we have created this together. Like, this is the biggest blessing beyond blessings. And I'm so grateful I had that, because I could anchor in that being my experience. So I knew this wasn't me rejecting it. Because actually I'd been so wholeheartedly embracing of it, and so wholeheartedly like, wow, how lucky am I? So yeah.
What happened after baby was born? How did you go full term in the end?
Oh yeah, over full term.
I mean, I actually think well done, because did you give birth in the States?
Yeah.
So I think that's quite a big deal, because generally my understanding of the medical system when it comes to birthing in America is it can be kind of a little bit trigger happy with, okay, let's get things going for you. So the fact that you went over full term is...
I mean, I want to share that, because I remember my OB saying to me, well, I'm on duty here and here.
Yeah.
So we'll induce you.
Yeah.
And I was like, sorry, what?
Yeah.
And she was like, well, if you want me to deliver your baby. And I'm like, hon, I love you, but I don't give a fuck if you deliver my baby. My baby's coming when the baby's coming. Like, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I mean, God laughs when you make plans. I ended up with a C-section after 63 hours of labor anyway, having resisted it. So I had my own form of medicine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just, it's funny you say that, because I got asked, what day do you want to have your baby? And I was like, in my head, this isn't how this works.
Yeah. So 63 hours of labor. I'm guessing that wasn't fun.
We went through waves, babes. There was times I was honestly watching the Great British Bake Off, like absolutely fine. I had my fairy lights. You have a private room over here, which is like I was very blessed. I had my doula there. I had my birth altar. Parts of it were lovely. Other parts, not so much. Yeah.
So you came out the other side. You have a bouncing baby boy. And how are you feeling?
I mean, there's so many layers to this. The first thing is, I have a bouncing baby boy, but he's been injured in labor. So I have a huge amount of guilt that is running through me and a lot of like overwhelm with that. The second thing is I'm actually paralyzed in my left leg. So my left leg is not working and no one can tell me why or when I'll walk again. And yeah, I've just been through this. And I'll be honest, I'm always honest. I had such a shit pregnancy. I thought I was owed. I thought we'd had a chat and I was owed a good labor. So I was pissed.
Yeah.
I was like, no, this is what I signed up for. I went through the shitty bit. This was meant to be my beautiful labor of, orgasmic birth.
Yeah.
So, and I say all that, but actually, and I was talking to friends about this earlier today, funnily enough, I was okay, but I was just very in survival. And I didn't realize I was in survival. There'd been I remember hearing a definition of trauma as too much, too fast, too soon, or something like this.
Okay.
And it felt like that's what had happened. There'd been all this experience in my body, which came on very quickly. And then there'd been this labor. And then there was him being injured and my leg not working. And I just don't think I could process it all fast enough. So weirdly, I was actually okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I went back to work after 8 weeks with a leg that just was starting to work.
I mean, if you could be in my stomach now, like it literally just did a flip, because that's so far removed from how we do it in the UK. And it's very US, like 8 weeks is normal. Although it's saying that when I had a Luna, I was probably working at 4 weeks, but I'd had a great pregnancy and working was me on my phone, baby in bed, and everything was hunky-dory. And so very, very different experience. You used the words before we came on live, death and rebirth. And I feel like there had to have been many deaths during that process.
Yeah.
But talk to me about the death after that process as well.
Yeah. So I remember going through my pregnancy, and like I said, a lot fell away very quickly. And a lot of like pleasures for me as well, like eating out a meal with my husband, great pleasure, something I couldn't do anymore. So that process, and I think they call it matrescence, that death and rebirth you go through when you become a mother. I remember reading a book about it in pregnancy, and I was probably about 7 or 8 months at this point, and I really resonated with it. And I feel like I went through that process of death and rebirth in the pregnancy. And then I came out the other side. And again, I think because I'd been through this intense death and rebirth, I was like, I've done that part.
Yeah.
Again, ha ha ha. I felt like I've done that part. Went back to work, was actually very happy to be back in work. Like, and I have to caveat this. I say I was back in work. I'm very fortunate I'd built my business to a point where I had recurring revenue, I had clients, I had my program still running. I was on a couple of hours of calls a week. It wasn't this super intense, although I did run a retreat at 8 weeks, but it wasn't in general this super intense experience. Like, it was a very gentle ease back in. And I love my work. And then being in that place of just, and I think it did happen over that year because I had just gone back, of realizing, oh no, I can't just go back. And it was almost like a back pedal. It was like I'd pedaled my way in and I was like, hang on, no, I need to back pedal. Who the fuck am I now?
Yeah.
and a very, again, intense death and rebirth. And I remember being in a session with my friend, and she's one of my best friends, and I was in the slight spin of things, and she said, why don't we do a VIP day? I said, done. I know you, I love you, I trust you, let's do it. And I'm sat at her house, and my question that I've gone in with was, these are my programs, let's build a funnel.
She's like, no.
Literally.
Yeah.
She's like, I love you, babe. And she's like, I know you now when you're lit up. And she's like, this isn't lighting you up. Salty slap in the face.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that hurts, because I'd poured everything into the creation of that. And prior to becoming a mother, I would have said I was in this greatest alignment. And it was that moment of realizing I'd actually been keeping myself really small. And that predated finding out I was pregnant. I'd put myself in this box. And particularly, I would say the box of being a coach or being a mentor, of like, okay, I'm a coach and a mentor. Everything I create needs to fit within this box.
Yeah.
And actually, it was like she ripped the box open, and I could re-see myself in new ways, and actually see these twinges of desire had been there prior to becoming a mother. But actually becoming a mother hadn't taken me further away from who I was. It had brought me closer. And I could see it now. And when you know what it's like, when you see it, you can't unsee it. So I had this seeing moment. And from there, it was this process of descaling my business, of actually closing programs that I never thought I would close, and really tapping back into elements of like, what do I love? What do I enjoy? And taking on new titles like podcaster. And also not cringing at myself for wanting those titles and wanting to hold those and hold them more fully.
What was most challenging for you about the decision to descale?
I mean, I love my clients. I love my clients and I love my programs, and they worked. They were powerful. And I'd spent hours and hours and hours creating for them, late nights, all the things that Instagram say people don't do. I definitely did. You know, I really poured into them. And that was like a grief. I feel like grief isn't spoken enough when it comes to businesses. But when you pour into something, and even, okay, maybe it's like a breakup grief, even when you both know you got to break up, still sad, still mourn that version of you that thought that was going to be what this looked like. So honestly, there was a mourning period, there was a grief period of like, I love these programs and I love these women and I've loved running them, and I need to let go of this right now. And something I haven't shared before, because again, I feel like I'm just letting all my batshit out today, but we're going with it. I remember lying in bed and I'd been crying. I'd been crying to Jake, saying, you know, I'm really sad of letting those go. I was in my grief. And as I was going to sleep, this voice literally spoke to me and said, you've got to let go of this smaller things, because I have something much bigger waiting for you. And that really helped me in that moment, because I was like, I have trust tattooed on my wrist. I could come back to trust. I was like, okay, I've just got to trust.
I'm really interested in how this aligns with your manifestation journey and your relationship with manifestation and conscious co-creation again.
So I think it's come to me now to the point where it's not always clean cut. And I kind of don't want to keep dipping into the conversation we already had. So for context, I interviewed Suzy for its upgrade season prior to this conversation. But I remember asking you a question. You said, I wish I could wrap this in a tidy, neat bow, and you can't. And I feel kind of the same way about this. I can't wrap it in a tidy, neat bow. And maybe there will come a day where I can. But I've just realized that actually there's always new levels of alignment ready, waiting for you. And sometimes manifestation is the big, juicy, exciting, never thought this could be my reality, things popping in, everything just feeling very aligned. But coming back to universal laws, there's the law of rhythms. The law of rhythms, we go through seasons. So just as Mother Nature, Mother Earth goes through winter, sometimes, babe, you got to sit in winter before you get to autumn, spring, and summer again. And I think it was really honoring that part of the manifestation journey rather than it just being the big, glittery, amazing things coming in all the time. being like actually being in a winter, being in the tunnel, being in the unknown, going through difficulty, having to get to know yourself, going through a death is the thing that leads to a rebirth.
Yeah.
And that's a very natural process to go through in our life. I'm at the point now where I'm more worried if you haven't gone through a death and rebirth. I'm like, what are you ignoring?
Yeah.
You know?
So what's your relationship like with alignment? Because that word has come up many times during this conversation. What does it mean to you now?
I think it's less about what it means to me now. I think being in alignment is a feeling. You can feel when, and I always have an image of it as like it actually comes from the Disney film Hercules, as this moment where all the stars align for him because he's like fulfilling his destiny.
Yeah.
And I feel like I always have that image, but you can feel it of like, oh, this is the path that I am meant to be on. And it might be scary. It doesn't necessarily feel good, but you have that feeling of like, this is what I am destined for. But I think where it's shifted is I think I thought it was that stars align moment. You find your alignment, you're on your path and you follow the path. And I think what I've realized is your alignment is always shifting. And your job is to not stay stuck on what your version of alignment was at one point and one version of yourself, but to keep rechecking in with yourself and being like, that was my path of greatest alignment, but where am I now? Is this still aligned? Now that, and you know, when big things shift in your life as well, in particular, I think there's always a gradual shifting. You've spoke about compounding.
Yeah.
So yes, checking in with the gradual shifting. And if you've been through a huge shift, of course, checking in, but also knowing that in honoring the past version of yourself and that past version of alignment, you are basically sacrificing for future you because future you requires you to let go of that past version of you that got you here, let go with love. But that's the only way that you can access that future version. Otherwise, you're basically saying, I'm going to sacrifice my future in the name of what I created in my past.
I love that. I really hate the saying, what got you here won't get you there, because it sounds so cliche. It's such an internet marketing thing to say.
But it's true.
And then, yeah, for sure. What is your process for checking alignment for yourself?
It's a really good question. And I think it comes back to, and I spoke about manifestation being more of an embodiment at this point, really just comes back to me feeling into things and asking uncomfortable questions. You know, even recently, for example, we've set up our whole life in Austin, literally just moved into a house. We've got, you know, just practical shit like our cars here and our son's got a US passport and things like that.
You've not just moved into a house, you built a house.
Yeah, we built a house next to my best friend. So we've got this whole, and I recently had to ask myself, is Austin where I want to be?
That's hilarious.
And not a nice question to ask, but I was in Mallorca. I've run this retreat in this incredible villa. I was in that island energy.
Yeah.
I was so present. I felt this deep sense of peace.
Yeah.
And I was like, am I meant to be in a European island somewhere?
And what was the answer?
Do you know what? The answer is yes, but not full time.
Right.
And I really, not to flip this around, but I do want to know this for you because you've moved abroad and you've come back to the UK.
Yeah.
What's that journey felt like?
I love the UK, which always surprises people when I say that. I love my home. I love where I live. It's very close to where I grew up. I really appreciate the childhood that I had. And I'm also just very resigned to the fact that until Aluna is 18, I am never going to create a question mark around, am I going to be living close to their dad or not? So because I'm very accepting of that, there doesn't feel like there is much of a push and pull. And I am an explorer and I love being in Austin right now and walking out and just feeling the humidity on my skin. Like I want to be dripping wet. Like that is when I am at my most happy. So I think that I will have a home outside of the UK again one day. Absolutely. But the other thing that I've also learned is that I loved Mexico for 16 months.
Yeah.
But it also felt too far away.
Yeah.
So probably it will be a European island. somewhere that is close enough to the UK that feels good, but
Yeah.
it's got some heat.
I love that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's exactly what we've been speaking about as well, where like your greatest alignment right now is the UK.
Yeah.
But can you answer that for when she's 18? Like you don't know where. And also if you do buy somewhere in Europe, please come visit.
Yeah. Dibs. Yeah.
Happy to come stay with you. But yeah, I think it's asking, coming back to your original question, I think it's asking, feeling, checking in. And if something's feeling off, asking the hard questions and being open and willing to hear the answers.
If something's feeling off, that is the gold. It's so simple. And it's interesting how willing we are to tolerate things feeling off for a really long time before we ask the question, because we are so petrified of hearing the answer.
Yeah. And it's easier to spot in other people, I think, than yourself.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. Like when you ask someone, they're like, oh, well, there's no way I could do that because of this. And you're like, hang on a minute. But then you're doing exactly the same thing. You're like, well, I've set everything up here. I can't possibly. I think that's where like the interesting stuff lies.
What did Jake say when you asked that question?
Poor man. I mean, this whole journey was like me being in London, me like, I don't want to live in London anymore. We need to go travel. And he had his business that was very set up. He had a team and he couldn't leave London at the time. Long story short, he quit his business and was like, let's go, babe. And then the pandemic started. So we've been on this whole journey together. But God bless that man. Like, honestly, he was sent to me by the angels because he's just like, let's talk about it. He's like, let's talk about it. Because he knows, as I know, if you shut down a conversation, that's not going to clear anything.
Yeah. It's
just going to sit there and it's actually going to probably feel worse. Whereas if I can just talk it out, you can kind of come to your own conclusion. And also, like, we've been on this magical mystery tour together. And at times it's been very together. And at times we've been pushing and pulling on opposite ends. That's just the reality. But he's open to exploring those questions too. He's like, do I want to be on a Mallorcan island?
Yeah.
And his answer's yes too, but just not full time either.
Yeah.
So like, we actually had a beautiful answer. It was like, let's find a Mallorcan house or wherever it may be and have that part of our life too.
I really like we've got a mutual friend who is on that island, Amber. So I'm like, I've got vibes about Menorca as well.
And also I can share this because she's happy to share this. She is so chill.
Yeah.
And Mallorca's like had this she is in her blissful European island energy. And I'm like, give me some of that. Like, I love it. So,
I'm available for that vibe. What's the big vision for you now?
Oh, I love that question. There's parts of it that are very clear. And I actually like that I'm having this moment with you right now because I feel like this is a clip that I will look back on in years to come. Right now, parts of it are very clear and parts of it aren't. The parts that are very, very clear to me is that I love the podcast. I love speaking to incredible people. I love just like digging in that way. Like I adore that part. So the podcast is going to be a huge part of it. I love the retreats. I love being in person with people.
Yeah.
I love curating the most life-changing experience. And we've not had a single person that's come on one that hasn't said it's life-changing.
Yeah.
I got like tingles now talking about it. I get like full shivery turn on, like, oh. So that's going to be a huge part of it. Like I love the in-person. But there's so many other parts that there's visions and there's opportunities and I don't know which one is the path right now. I will say the third piece that I'd add to that though is I'm very interested in exploring tantra, feminine energetics, all that kind of side of things in a way that I haven't before.
Yeah.
And I signed up to Layla Martin's certification, but I signed up prior to getting pregnant.
Okay.
Got pregnant, was really sick.
Yeah.
So I was like, I emailed the team and I was like, I'll pay you every month, but like I can't take part. And they're like, don't worry, we'll extend. They extended me. And I realized now I actually had to go through my pregnancy experience to be in the right space to go into those studies.
Yeah.
Because before I wasn't in a place to embody it and receive it in the way that I can now. And I needed to go through that softening and that slowing down and that winter, that deep, deep winter, to be like, yeah, do you know what? I can vibe with this now. I'm open to it in a way that I wouldn't have said I was closed off to it previously, but part of me, I think was. And now I'm open to it. So I'm excited to see what that magical mystery tour of life, that's what I'm on. Parts of it are really clear and parts of it I'm like, magical mystery tour, show me what you got.
Do you find after you've been on retreat that you have a massive upgrade or manifestation, transformation happens for you?
Yeah, massively. And also it starts to happen before. I become like the nutty professor, and I really do. You spoke earlier about like, you know, the transmission that you receive. I start to receive that in the weeks before, and I literally am like the nutty professor. I'm writing things down. I'm shifting things in my own life.
Yeah.
And then I remember that, for example, this Mallorca retreat, the 24 hours beforehand, I had this huge realization that I have created a really beautiful life and a beautiful family, but I don't put that as a priority enough. So what I mean by that is, and I don't talk about this very much, which is interesting, but my relationship's one of the things I'm proudest of. I am so proud of the marriage that I have with Jake. And because it is so solid, because we are in such truth with each other and such like deep connection, I don't make him a priority.
Yeah, taken for granted a bit.
I take him for granted.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, me and Jake are good, or me and Jake have got this. And yeah, of course we have blow ups and we have our moments, but I'm like, we know we've got this contract, we're going to stay together. And so it was really interesting for me in that first 24 hours in Mallorca, it dropped in. It was like, the best parts of your life aren't the parts to be taken for granted. Those are the parts to lean into even more.
Yeah.
And so I shared that with him, and it was interesting then to see that filtering through in the retreat itself. And yeah, massive upgrades.
I love that so much. And all of the work that you do in the Vita certification is going to amplify that intention so much more for you both. It's going to be super juicy.
I love this. Well, we're in this we're in Layla's tantric mastermind together at the moment, so we're already on like this wild and magical journey together, which is pushing us out of all our comfort zones, and it's great.
I was literally just today speaking to another lady and who is in that mastermind as well. She was talking about being in Manchester.
Oh my gosh.
I'll tell you after.
Yes,
I won't
please
name
do.
her on the...
Can I just lull about this, by the way? We joined this tantric mastermind and we're like, oh, this is going to be so amazing. 2 retreats as part of it. We're like, oh, wonder where the first retreat's going to be.
Mankland.
Yeah, Yorkshire. I flew into my parents' house. I couldn't tell them where I was going. God forbid they ever like, can you imagine? Please look after my son. We're off to a tantric retreat. But yeah, I was like, Yorkshire. And it was amazing. It was, it was interesting what you said about the UK earlier, because I've got so much of an appreciation for the UK now. Yeah. It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
And it's very soothing. Yeah. It's a very soothing, grounding energy. The I thought nature was jungle and I don't know, like extremes of like these landscapes. And now I go back and I'm like, the nature here is stunning.
The rolling hills, I adore. And also Scotland, Wales, Ireland, have some of the most stunning scenery, some of the most stunning places on the whole planet. Yeah. So yeah,
I'm excited. I'm going to Orkney. My right hand woman, who was just an angel sent to me, Vita, she lives in the Orkney Islands, so she's getting married there next summer. So I'm really excited. I'm like, I get to explore this new part of yeah.
What I hear from you is just an opening, an acceptance, and allowing. That feels like a huge upgrade for how you are engaging with life right now, which is very it's grounding.
Thank you for reflecting that back to me, because yeah, it's definitely been a wild journey, and I want to be honest about that. I don't want people to feel alone when they're in that tunnel or in that winter and questioning every day, who the fuck am I?
Yeah.
And but I can feel that now. I can feel like that has been opening me up to something greater than what I had in mind before.
Can you please tell everybody where they can find more of your magic?
So thank you for describing it as magic. I was like, had a little moment then. So I'm hanging out on the podcast, oversharing constantly on its upgrade season. And then I hang out on Instagram way more than I should. So it's I am Alexandria Maria. And yeah, send me a DM, send me a dilemma. I'm open to it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being so incredible.
Thank you for this.
If you have loved this episode as much as I have, do me a favor. Please share this with at least one person that you know. Drop myself or Alex a DM in Instagram. Let us know what your biggest takeaway is. And in the meantime, please remember that faith plus action equals miracles.